Do you remember that one tweet by Joe Jorgensen, Tyler? I don't know if you have it or not.
Jeez.
And all of a sudden, we get this tweet about, what do you call it, racism and Black Lives Matter, and we need to be, so if you can make that big, it's not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. Black Lives Matter means standing in solidarity with a mourning Black community as we fight together to end qualified immunity, police brutality, sentencing disparities, and the war on drugs, not support of any organization by that name. Okay. So to me, I see that, and I don't know how you guys process it. I'm going to speak for myself. You guys can say, Pat, you're full of, you have no clue what you're talking about. I see that, and I see somebody caving in to PC community and political correctness, just kind of like, hey, beating you down, you better agree with us. Okay, let's throw this out there so maybe we can get some independent voters who are agreeing with Black Lives Matter. Okay, let's throw so I can get some of the Democratic voters to come to, so that argument, then all of a sudden the people that are true libertarians are like, wait a minute. That's not what I believe in. I'm out.
Well, I mean, look, I was very vocal and very critical about that tweet as well as a bunch of other ones. It was just, it was just awful and completely tone deaf. I mean, it's also like she said it while the longest sustained riots in modern American history were going on. I mean, it's like, like people were terrified in almost every major city across the country, businesses being destroyed. And then it's just like, well, it's also not libertarian at all. The libertarianism really has nothing to say about how you feel about other people. If you are passively not racist, that's more than good enough. We don't require anyone to be actively anti-racist, whatever that means. The truth is that, look, I was very critical of Joe Jorgensen during this campaign. I think that's why a lot of her people around her don't like me very much and why they gave her some bad information that she came and shared with you on the show. But I think that it does, libertarians, if we're going to, look, like to the fundraising issue before, I think as far as national candidates go, the truth is that Ron Paul at the time broke fundraising records. Bernie Sanders then came in and smashed those, and they didn't do it by going to private equity guys.
The guy
they didn't do it by
$6 million on MySpace in 24 hours.
That's right. That's right.
Ron Paul.
Yes, it was, and it broke records, and he didn't even set it up. He literally just got into the camera and said things that people really appreciated. Yep. And so what I think is that the role for libertarians here is that we're not going to outcompete Democrats and Republicans in terms of getting more money from private equity or big banks or something like that, because we're not offering them what Democrats and Republicans are. Right. The truth is that if the libertarian agenda were to ever be put in place, big banks would make way less money than they make right now. We're the party who wants to abolish the Federal Reserve and make sure there's never banker bailouts again and that they don't have unlimited access to easy money and that they can, I bet if I could borrow money at 0% interest rate and then loan it out to the public at 4%, I could do pretty good making money too. But we're trying to end that scheme. But what we can do is talk to the American people who are being ripped off by this whole system and get them excited. So the problem with Joe Jorgensen is that when you're so out of touch with what's going on in the culture right now, and you just say something like this that rightly by you is perceived as caving in to a literal mob, that doesn't get them riled up. In this time period, while Joe Jorgensen is tweeting that, the American people the government has perpetrated one of the greatest crimes against the American people in modern American history, which were the lockdowns, kicking tens of millions of people out of work with no legal justification, just under emergency powers. Governor decrees, we're mini dictators now, it's illegal now for you to go to work. And at the same time, they have raped the American people, just completely looted the treasury and bailed out every giant corporation in the country. It was like the most heinous crime committed against the American people. And in that moment to stand up and say, you know what the problem is? You, average American, you're not anti-racist enough. That's the real issue. That's what libertarians have to say.
That
just
affected
awful
your business,
message,
didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I lost all my income immediately. I mean, I bled through my savings in about 4 months. I mean, the closures, the COVID closures are definitely what red-pilled me so hard. I think Joe's tweet is just indicative of the old format of libertarians trying to court both sides of the culture war. But we're so deep into it now that if you don't know if you don't define what the DNA of libertarianism is today, like how do we standardize any type of messaging? Because that's very contrary to the opinions of like people on this panel that want to see libertarians move more to the right on these issues.
Well, and also I agree with that, and also just kind of knowing where your best potential, like I want everyone to be a libertarian, but I could also recognize that there's certain groups that are probably a little bit more likely to respond to our message. And what you have going on, if you have your finger on the pulse of the country, is that you have a lot of people like on the political right half of the country who align with a lot of our views. A lot of people who really are fed up with like the wars and the deep state, all the three-letter agencies that are fed up with the lockdowns even after all, the Republican governors by and large were awful on the lockdowns. We talk about like the two who were good, like DeSantis and Noem. The rest of them all basically went along with the program. And then you have a bunch of people who historically have been more left liberals who are completely turned off by all this woke insanity and are kind of leaving that. So what you're playing to with this message is the people who love the woke insanity and are left liberals.
Right.
Of all the groups, this is the least likely to bear fruit for you. So it's just even on top of it being incorrect, it's also just strategically stupid.
Well, you can find answers.
That's the part where I wonder, like, who are you processing issues with before you put a message like this? Because you're speaking on behalf of 4.6 million people that voted for this concept, this philosophy just 4 years ago. Like, who are you strategizing with to say, let's go and do this? That's what I was asking about Spike. But Jessica, you voted for Obama in 2008, right? You were more on the liberal side, Democratic side. So what caused you to say, because everybody's selling their philosophies, what got you to the tipping point to say, you know what, I kind of like what these guys stand for?
Just on Joe's tweet again, do you think that's indicative of the fact that she's an educator, and we know how woke that went?
So,
being education.
I would just like to weigh in. Joe didn't even know that was made. It was from a speech that was written for her at the convention, and they clipped it for the tweet. So I just want to make a point that like she didn't do that. I don't know how Joe Jorgensen's never been on her Twitter, but I do want to talk about this.
By the way, what you just said, I hate to say this, eliminates her from ever running as the face of the Libertarian Party. What you just said right there, because if you can't speak for yourself, I'm sorry, I don't want you at the White House.
And if you do outsource that, then it's your responsibility.
I'm not cool with that. I want to know what you're all about.
Yes.
So, what you were saying
in the wake of the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the protests and the riots that sparked, there was an excellent opportunity for libertarians to talk about the same system that had unaccountable police officers that were doing those things, as well as that same criminal justice system that was letting people take over entire communities and riot and pillage and burn down buildings and homes. It was a great opportunity to do that. That's what should have been done. That's what I was trying to do in my little corner, is saying the same system that this group's mad at is the same system that this group is mad at, and we should be talking about that. Instead of playing to the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter culture war, good cop, bad cop routine, saying you're all being scammed and lied to. The way forward is to fix these specific policies or end these specific policies that led to what we're experiencing right now. And if we do that, then we can both reach people across the board. We can actually have a moment of unification, and we can wake up some people that are looking at all of this and saying, I don't think anyone is speaking to the actual solution to this. When you go one side or the other, when you start using too much of the verbiage and the tone and narrative of one side or the other, you're signaling, well, I actually kind of support this side. Well, if you're trying to get elected, then you're basically saying, yeah, I'm like this guy, except I'm less likely to win. Or I'm like this guy, except I'm less likely to win. But if instead you provide a stark contrast and say, no, here's why they're both wrong. I hated when I would get interviewed and they'd say, do you agree with Trump on this or do you agree with Biden on this? And I'd say, here's why they're both wrong and here's what libertarians believe. And that was the problem with that tweet and with a lot of other things, is that instead of trying to provide a stark contrast between the Republicans and Democrats and how they both work together to fail us on this, instead it was, well, on this I agree with this side more and on that I agree with that side more. Well, why are we relevant then?
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.